Greetings. This talk focuses on the question of how do I make money trading options on Tesla and Tesla's stock price and my knowledge of Tesla. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is the first time on our channel, please take time to like and subscribe. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. I have been teaching an options class sort of on and off for the last few weeks, and one of the folks that I've been working with via our channel asked a question of how can he take the knowledge he's gained on stocks from having read one of two books I recommended. The book is called One Up on Wall Street by Peter Lynch, and then the other book I recommended was a guy named Taleb called The Black Swan. The goal is that the Peter Lynch book, One Up on Wall Street, is designed to be sort of a fundamental analysis process on how investing works, and the Taleb book is designed to really help introduce the whole idea of how to do trading and things that happen that can be very lucrative and how and why to do it. So I thought the question was interesting because I want you to make money, but on the other hand, it does take work to both understand what's going on and to make money doing it. And so the challenge is, do you want to do the homework or not? So the first thing that I want to recommend is that you read the Peter Lynch book, One Up on Wall Street. And the second thing is to read Taleb's book regarding the Black Swan. Both are excellent. Both are considered industry standards for understanding how to invest better. I wanted to note that we have an email address, which is admin@teslafaninsight.com. And if you'd like to dive more intensely into how to trade options, etc., we have a process for more intensive sort of training, etc. But because of a bunch of rules, I'm not a registered rep, so therefore we're not allowed to cover certain things in an open environment like YouTube that you might be able to do in a class, etc. So we will sort of go to a certain level of information, and beyond that, we're going to be sort of avoiding doing more because, frankly, we're not allowed to in a public forum, but different things can be done in a somewhat private forum. In order to sort of have a focal sort of what to cover today, I wanted to do a kind of a review of what happened during Tesla's last earnings announcement, and then also review some of the things that went on in terms of options during that period. And the reason for that is that if you have a stock that you understand well in every way, so as Peter Lynch talked about, people tend to invest in things they don't know anything about. And so if you know a lot about Tesla and you own one, etc., it turns into an excellent hunting ground for identifying ways to make money in it. In our previous options class, we kind of reviewed what happened at the end of the week. This was 2 weeks ago, and then we kind of reviewed on Monday of this week what happened in the Friday trading sessions. In general, over the next couple of days, we're at the 18th of December 2018. The Fed is scheduled to make an announcement about whether or not they're going to raise interest rates tomorrow. And if they are raising interest rates, it could tank the whole stock market, including Tesla. And the reason is that there are a lot of people that want the guaranteed interest rates that are getting higher from government bonds and don't want to mess with stocks. So as a result, Fed raising rates can actually crush stocks, and Tesla might be crushed sympathetically with those other stocks. The other thing that's going on right now is that with Tesla and Tesla stock, etc., is just the fact that there's a lot of really smart people with a lot of money at risk that are losing money as Tesla stock price is rising. So during open periods when there's no other information available, one can sow seeds of discontent that actually can lower the stock price. And the announcement, or several stories that came out suggesting that Tesla has satiated all the demand for the Model 3, and therefore their sales are going to drop based on that, is sort of the story that's out there, and that's being maintained by the big hedge funds as they leverage the media and PR to try to drive the stock price down. So those are some of the general sort of variables that are impacting things right now. The next section of this show, I wanted to sort of review in general what happened during the last earnings announcement, because Tesla one of the ways to get comfortable with a stock, trading or investing it, is sort of understanding impact of how earnings might impact the stock. So basically, if we were to review what exactly happened, is that Tesla's stock price was approximately $250 a share. What then happened was there's a hedge fund manager named Andrew Lack, and Andrew made an announcement that he was transitioning from a Tesla bear to a Tesla bull. So basically what he announced was that based on a number of variables, he had decided to stop shorting the stock and instead start buying calls or other instruments based on an accelerating value of Tesla. What then happened is over a 24-hour period, the stock went from about 250 to almost 290, and something's in the 295 range perhaps. What then happened was Tesla came out with their earnings kind of early, and the stock therefore went from about 290 to $340 a share-ish, and this all happened over a 72-hour period. So what happens typically, so first of all, what happens with stocks that have a high delta like Tesla is that, yes, the stock can go 100 points in 3 days very easily. And there are many reasons for that. One reason is that that it is somewhat unpredictable. Things have happened where the stock missed its number, etc. Elon has stated that they're going to be profitable going forward quarter after quarter, but things that can be happening is that, number one, are they going to be profitable? Number two, how profitable are they going to be? Can be variables that impact the stock significantly. So I kind of bring these up because as we study and try to understand where Tesla's at, where they're going, the first note is 100-point moves on a stock is definitely possible. Why is that a big deal? Because frankly, if you like the stock, you can stay in it and possibly have nice size returns without trading options in a short period of time because of how much it tends to move, particularly around earnings once it's known how much they're making. The second issue that comes up here is the fact that there's a battle between hedge fund managers where some of them are betting against Tesla and some of them are betting with. And so it tends to be the case that companies that are beating expectations on earnings continue to do so. And I believe that Tesla is in that position right now to do that and continue to do that. And so that's one of the reasons why I think it's an awesome stock to both own the stock, but it's also an awesome stock to trade on an options basis because of its delta, the movement around of the stock, and to some extent it can be predictable based on what's going on. It is now probably, we're ticking down to about 3 weeks away from earnings being announced. What starts to happen at about 2 weeks before earnings are announced on any company, particularly volatile ones, is that's when the delta portion of the stock price of the option, or the cost of an option, starts to rise. So that means that the volatility of the company can actually get quite heavy. So the next sort of question mark is sort of what happened in the last round, and the answer is the stock kind of bounced up from the 250 range-ish to the 340 range based on its last earnings announcements. In this case, it's an interesting earnings announcement that's coming in. Tesla, I want to say, has artificially high numbers that'll be shown to some extent because what's going on is that there's a tax credit of $7,500 that expires at the end of this year. And the issue with that tax credit is once it expires, there are a whole bunch of people who basically kind of don't get that $7,500 discount. So Tesla has been pushing out a lot of cars with folks trying to take advantage of this EV tax credit. And for that reason, and the fact that production has been worked out on the Model 3, I think they easily exceed the production goals and numbers that were expected for the quarter. The only fly in the ointment is they've had a little bit of issues with shipping in terms of, it takes 2 or 3 weeks to ship by train, and then they've tried to switch to truck, and then there's a truck shortage, so Tesla even went to the point of buying a trucking company to make sure it could acquire the vehicles necessary to get cars to end users in a timely fashion. So based on all this, I'm fairly confident that the production numbers will be on point, even if profitability may not be totally on point because they've had to put in extra cash in order to make sure the deliveries were met at the end of the year. So one of the arguments you could make about where Tesla is right now, that they've artificially pushed the number high, and by the end of 2018, there may be an exhaustion process where sales would sort of decline based on people, getting underneath the time window at the end of this year. That argument might make some sense, and it might be part of the reason why the stock price has fallen in recent days. But the issue that sort of battles that argument is that now that Elon and Tesla are opening up the European and Asian buying organization or entities to the process, it's been announced that based on current production, half the cars produced will be shipped on a weekly basis to the Amsterdam arrival point, and then those cars will be distributed throughout Europe. What this suggests then is that instead of selling something like 6,000 cars a week in the United States, we're now going to see 3,000 cars in Europe, maybe 500 to 1,000 in Asia, and that only leaves about 2,000 cars in the Model 3 within the United States until there's another bump in production from the Gigafactory, and then from there into the Model 3s being produced. So if you look at those numbers, going from 6,000 to 3,000, a 50% cut based on shipping to Europe, I actually think it's going to just create a backlog of cars in demand, but we're all going to see what happens over time. The next thing that I wanted to cover is the fact, so we know that Tesla stock price is volatile, number one. Number two, we know there's a potential for a short squeeze once we get to a certain number. Number three, we know that they're moving a lot of cars and a lot of revenue is moving towards Tesla that fuels all operations in a number of ways, including the ability to pay off debt that's due in February. So I believe that most of the news on Tesla is very positive, but there can be sympathy to things like tariffs with China. There can be sympathy to things like Mr. Trump doing things like shutting down the government. The market hates uncertainty. So when you introduce uncertain times, all these variables could actually very negatively impact the stock. When it comes to trading options, what I've tried to do is, if you go back 2 or 3 shows, and we'll put a couple of markers above this show, you'll notice that we're introducing ideas that might have occurred that were interesting trading circumstances that could have been quite lucrative. We talked about what tends to happen on Fridays in terms of people trying to sell out of positions and get out. That's something that can be traded. One of the big difficulties about a class like this on options is there are certain people that have the resources to trade options for the long term, 3, 6 months, a year. There are other people that are interested in short-term gains and the risk that comes with it. That's trading for a day, a couple of days, etc. And those are completely different trading environments. Hence, it's difficult to talk that through as a situation right now. The number one thing, though, that I think is definitely in order is to take the time to review the last couple of earnings announcements and how the stock price moved surrounding those announcements, because companies tend to trade in a similar fashion in quarter after quarter. And I think that for Tesla, the trading activity will probably be somewhat similar, given that it's unknown what the production numbers are, etc. Now, speaking of production numbers, one of the things we've talked about a lot is the fact that we don't know what Tesla's confirmed production numbers are, but there's a lot of cars on the street. And Bloomberg and others, if you type in Bloomberg and Tesla estimate of production, there are a number of analysts as well as large entities like Bloomberg that are using VIN numbers and other things to predict how many cars were produced. So what's interesting about that is you can extract number of produced times the average price per car to get a sense for what the revenue number was for Tesla. And if you compare that number against what analysts have expected, you can see whether or not you think Tesla is going to exceed or not exceed their production numbers, and that can influence how you trade, whether it's a call or a put or simply own the stock. Those are some of the options that you have on the table. And, I think all of them are interesting, and it really is worthwhile to focus on companies like Tesla that have high volatility or delta, as well as when you have what's called a market. Anytime there are two different opinions on the value of an asset, that's called a market. In the case of Tesla, there's a lot of people that think it's going to go down still, and there are a lot of people that still think it's going to rise. And that disagreement in the marketplace tends to end up with violent moves in price up or down over time. Hence, why trading options learning how to trade options and trading options on a company like Tesla can be a great way to go. So I want to thank you for taking time out to view our discussion of options. Maybe you call it Options Tuesday, where we're sort of focused on investing in Tesla and, options trading in this case. Just a reminder, I'm about to do my 20 leg lifts here in the early morning in Washington, D.C., heading in for an oatmeal for breakfast. Definitely have to get out for some exercise today. It's been cold, so the temptation to not be out walking has been great. But roller skating is another option which I'll be out to do today. At any rate, this is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. The show that we tend to do in this period at least one show a day or every other day. And we look forward to covering topics, and you're mentioning sort of topics you think we should consider would also be helpful, because it'll add to our repertoire of things to cover going forward. Once again, this is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. Tschüss, macht's gut, au revoir, lehitraot, choda hafez, and have a great day, and bye for now.